final thing, I can't help but bite on this. You mentioned that you fear DeSantis more than Trump. Why is that?
Because DeSantis seems serious. Like Trump's going to get in and people are going to use him to further fascist agendas in America, right? Which is what he did in 2016. And that's unfortunate. But DeSantis is going to lead fascist agendas. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like either way, it's a bad thing overall, right? Excuse me. But Trump is incompetent. Trump is a buffoon. And so I'd rather have, if I have to choose between a buffoon who is a useful tool for evil or like an evil genius, I'm going to go with the buffoon because I feel like DeSantis would know how, like what he's done in Florida is scary.
Yeah.
It's scary how he's completely turned Florida into like this gulag at this point. And like the things he's been able to, if it's not for freaking the evil Disney Corporation, I don't know, like that's how bad DeSantis is, that we have to root for an evil corporation to defeat him.
It's an ugly landscape.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say, I do feel like DeSantis upped his buffoon quotient with his Twitter launch disaster.
Oh, yeah.
So perhaps that gives you a little more.
Maybe.
We'll
see.
I think you're right that DeSantis, like, he's most known for these pretty openly authoritarian laws in Florida. And actually the courts have slapped down some of them for being against the First Amendment. Like, that's how authoritarian a lot of this stuff is. So I agree with you on that front. I've gone back and forth on this question as to who I think is worse. And at least at the moment where I've landed is that I actually fear Trump just a little bit more for the simple reason that we know what happens when he loses an election. He's going to be like, I didn't lose it. And he tries to use every avenue available to overturn it. Whereas my instinct at the moment, and I could definitely be wrong and eat crow on this, but my instinct at the moment is that I kind of think DeSantis would be a little more like Jeb Bush or George W. Bush if he loses and just be like, peace, I'm gone.
Possibly.
Actually, George Bush is a bad example because he stole the election from Gore, so I take that back.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to go to. Imagine if Trump was competent. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like a DeSantis would inherit the same political reality of this like Overton window breaking far right fringe culture that we are dealing with in America. He would inherit that same source of power, but then be competent enough to wield it. And that's the scary so I'm like, again, I am generally I'm a vote when voting day comes. And I'm not about to pay attention in between too much myself. Right. But I know enough to know that I would rather like fight an imbecile than a person that actually knows what they're doing. And so I'm scared of like if January 6th, but also competent. You see what I'm saying? January 6th, but also not you like.
The other thing I would say though is the normal laws of political gravity seem to apply to Ron DeSantis in a way they don't to Trump. And that's
Trump
the
just
thing.
ignores it.
I mean, that's
He's like, whatever.
That's the thing about Trump that's been so scary at times and hard to deal with is like just the normal rules, the normal things that would bring someone down and make them, so you never hear from them again. Like it just doesn't apply to him. DeSantis seems to be having to play by like the normal rules of politics. I don't think he could survive the same things that Trump has survived. Yeah, he doesn't have that.
It's all charisma. Yeah, it comes down to charisma.
He doesn't have that thing.
He's not a game show host.
Right.
He's not a game show host. He doesn't have that X factor. Apparently there's reports right now he can't even like decide on how to say his own last name, which is kind of funny.
That's literally true. He keeps going. He'll do one event and say DeSantis. I'm Ron DeSantis. And then he'll do another one and say DeSantis.
Right.
And Trump is going after him for that too, because of course Trump is. He'll go after him for anything and make it work.
That's why I feel more concerned about another term of Trump than DeSantis. On the other hand, to make your case, Trump is one and done if he gets reelected. DeSantis could be there for 8 years.
Oh God, he could be.
Trump's gonna try to make himself emperor.
Trump will try to make himself emperor. I think the other thing I think about is that you have to remember. So first off, like all this is bullshit to begin with. Just make sure I want to be very clear to whatever pocket of an audience is mad at me for even being here. That I'm not jumping too far into electoralism. But the thing I want to remind everybody of is that who could actually win? I don't think Trump. Again, I am relatively checked out. I don't think Trump has a chance of winning because I don't think he's going to convince those white moderates in suburbs in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, etc. I think they're done. I think they're not coming back around for Trump for a second round. They said what they had to say in 2020. As bad as Biden is on all these different levels, I don't think they're coming back for that. They don't give a fuck about trans people, black people, immigrants. They do not care about those people. They don't.
They do care about abortion, though.
They care. Well, go ahead.
They do care about abortion, though. And DeSantis has, he signed a 6-week abortion ban. He's made himself more extreme than Trump on the issue of abortion. So I think you're right. I think DeSantis would be a more formidable candidate, but the case is not as in the general. The case is not as clear cut to me as some people seem to think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this one, FD. I mean, I don't think it's impossible for Trump to win again a general election, but I do think it's very, very unlikely because he does have that stench of like repulsive to normies. Like he's got his cult, but normies and moderates are just like, just a little too far, a little too much.
I think versus Biden, DeSantis, if you take your average 35-year-old not in middle America, suburban, ex-urban American who does not care that trans people are being persecuted and trying to be eliminated from society, does not care at all about and would prefer critical race theory not be taught because it makes them feel bad. Like all of those extreme authoritarian things, I don't think that. So the abortion thing is true. That might scare them a little bit, but I just don't know if it scares them enough. That what they're scared of is Trump's buffoonery. It embarrasses them to an extent. I think it's a weird reversal of identity politics. Is what I think is happening.
They feel he reflects poorly on the race.
I think so. I think to an extent. For those who are moderate, right? Like you can't hide racism when Trump is in the office.
Right. Right. Yes, correct.
All right. That was FD Signifier. Krystal, thoughts?
Super fun to engage with him on a variety of topics. I actually really enjoyed that part of the end, the Trump DeSantis debate. I still think I fear Trump more than DeSantis, though, on balance, just because he does have that like weird political Teflon Don thing going on, and DeSantis just doesn't have that same skill.
So there are 3 positions in this debate. Number 1, Trump is worse. Number 2, DeSantis is worse. Number 3, they're equally bad.
Yeah.
I have at one time or another had every one of those positions. It all depends on what's in the news. It all depends on what is emphasized in my mind. And again, at the moment, he made a good case, but he just still didn't talk me out of, like, I sort of think I undervalued or understated just how big of a deal January 6th was, because there was this liberal reaction to it, which was so over the top and sort of goofy that it almost made me kind of be like, okay, it wasn't close to working, so let's relax, right? But at the same time, over 60 court cases trying to throw out the results of the election, reporting internally where, they basically talked about how he was this close to invoking martial law and seizing the voting machines. Literally, the fact that we didn't have an outright coup is thanks to a couple of random lawyers who were working in the Trump White House who had to argue with people like Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell to their face and be like, you're fucking idiots. You lost every case. You don't know what you're talking about. And the fact that Trump happened to be more swayed by them in that exact moment. Like, it really hinged on these very minor moments that people really don't appreciate, that it could have been a hell of a lot worse even than it was. And so we know, listen, Krystal, there is, I hate to say this. You already know this though. There is no good ending to what's going to come. If Donald Trump wins the primary and wins the presidency, horrible. If he wins the primary and loses the presidency, he's going to say he won. If he loses the primary, he's going to say he won, right? But if he loses the primary, I guess the best case scenario is if he loses the primary to DeSantis or something, and then he runs third party and just destroys the Republicans. That'd be awesome.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. But that's very unlikely. Like that's what, a 7% chance of all the possibilities there. So again, what I fear the most, I think on policy, it is mostly a wash between Trump and DeSantis. I think they almost totally agree on social issues, even though at the moment it seems like DeSantis is worse. But remember, Trump banned trans people from the military. He'll go wherever the winds take him. The winds right now are super far right. I think they're kind of equal on social issues. On economic issues, I think there's an argument that Trump is a little bit better because he does want to cut Medicare and Social Security. But overall, I think it's mostly a wash. But just the fact that Trump clearly does not believe in the peaceful transfer of power, and we know that, whereas with DeSantis, it's an open question. I think Trump is a little bit worse.
On policy, I think DeSantis is probably worse overall, because I don't think Trump, like, he'll pay lip service to, the transphobia and like all that stuff, but it's not where his heart is, where
But he banned trans people from the military. I agree, it's not where his heart is. I think you're right about that, but he banned trans people from the military. Like, he still acts in that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. DeSantis has just shown a level of like creative malevolence on these issues that I don't see Trump having the same sort of like applying his same creativity to it. And on economic issues, I do think Trump is probably a little bit better than Ron DeSantis, who's like a classic Tea Party deficit hawk dude. I mean, it's just impossible. These are two men who have, neither one of them really has any principles, right? It's just all ambition. It's all posturing. It's all genuinely reactive. So it makes it impossible to really compare them on a policy basis. So yeah, I think the fact that Trump, even though he may have less executive competence, that he has so much political acumen, to me makes him scarier. Now, where I disagree with both you and FD is on the possibility of Trump getting back in the White House. Even though I think Biden is the favorite, Trump didn't lose by all that much last time. And I'm seeing all these focus groups where they'll interview Biden voters. New York Times just had one. They interviewed 11 Biden voters, and it's a small sample, so you can't draw that much from it. But it's like, I think 10 of the 11 were like, I'm going to vote for Biden again. And the other one was like, I'm probably just not going to vote. And these are people who voted for Biden last time around. So on the one hand, you'd say, well, they're almost all largely with Biden, even though they're really disappointed in him because they despise Trump and they despise DeSantis. On the other hand, you're like, he kind of needs that 11th one to be there for him too. And there's some erosion there that could be enough people staying home, people being disappointed, people voting third party, that make it possible for Trump to be able to succeed and overcome what were tiny margins in a handful of key states last time around.
So my claim is, I don't think it's as strong as you're interpreting it. My claim is Trump is the least electable general election candidate for the Republicans. That's my claim. But that doesn't mean that at this point that I think he's guaranteed to lose to Biden. I think there was a time where I was making that claim because it was when Trump was bottoming out at like 25% favorability. But right now, no, he can win. I just think still a DeSantis, even like a Nikki Haley, would have a better chance against Biden than Trump would have against Biden. So that's my claim on that. And on the how competent he is argument, I actually have a disagreement with FD on that, which is, yeah, he's a buffoon. Yeah, he's sloppy. Yeah, he shoots from the hip. Yeah, he's impulsive. But I think he was actually very politically effective because he got stuff done in a different way by like using the bully pulpit and screaming at people and getting them to fall in line. But at the end of the day, it still worked. He still got that 2017 tax cut bill where 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. He still was able, through executive authority alone, to destroy the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was a government agency which returned $12 billion to Americans who were defrauded by big financial institutions. So I think if you actually look, I think Trump got a lot done. I think it's actually overstated how, he wasn't competent. I actually think in his own way, he kind of was competent.
There's also, I think those are good points. There's also just a lot of decades of conservative think tank infrastructure that kicks into gear. So for example, the tax cut thing, like he didn't architect any of that. Paul Ryan and Heritage Foundation, whatever, they've been cooking this up over years. So all he has to do is say like, go do that thing. And they're ready with the policy written and to roll the whole thing out. So there's a lot of that just kicks into gear when you have a Republican in office that overcomes some of his own personal like managerial incompetence.
That's true, but I'd also just argue he's a fighter, right? So they draft the policy. He goes out there. He's like, this is the best bill anybody's ever seen ever. It's going to cut everybody's taxes. It's going to cut the middle class's taxes. And these terrible Democrats don't want to look out for working class people. Like he knows how to sell it and use the bully pulpit. Anytime any Republican made a little bit of a peep against him, he would unleash the demons of hell on them, and then they would collapse and be out of politics within a year, right? And that's actually a unique kind of competence. That's a unique kind of competence in politics.
politically, he is very competent and has usually good instincts. So, I mean, he was like a little bit weirdly online last election.
It waves.
And whatever.
It goes in waves.
It does go in waves. It's not consistent, but he has way better political capability than Ron DeSantis. And ultimately, that does matter in terms of being able to get an agenda passed. So I guess that's what I think about that whole debate. But great talking to FD about that and a variety of other issues. We're both fans of his work.
Indeed. All right, guys, you know the drill. You know the shameless plugs. Everybody go on over to Substack, and if you pay $5 a month, you get the video of every interview, and you get it a day early, and you get our newsletters, and everybody else can sign up on Substack for free, and you get the audio version of the podcast emailed to you as soon as it drops, usually on Saturdays. And, of course, much love to everybody who already supports this show. We appreciate you deeply. All right, guys, we love you. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Bye, guys.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.